Let's talk about the morning of November 18th, 2025. You probably woke up, grabbed your coffee, tried to check your phone, and nothing. Just nothing worked. For a huge part of the world, for about an hour, it felt like the internet just broke, like the digital world was completely falling apart. So, what on earth actually happened? Let's get into it. I mean, seriously, 1 minute you're scrolling along, everything's fine, the next, poof, gone. Millions of us were just staring at our screens, all asking the same exact question. And no, it wasn't your Wi-Fi, and it definitely was not just you. So you know the drill. What's the first thing you do when something feels broken? You jump over to X, right? To see if anyone else is complaining. But nope. You got hit with an internal server error. The one place everyone rushes to when things go down was also down.
Okay, fine, no social media. Maybe it's a sign to actually get some work done. You pull up Canva to finish that presentation and bam, service unavailable. Just like that, the tools we all rely on to be creative and productive were just gone. You could almost feel the collective panic of a million deadlines.
And this wasn't just the usual websites. Even the really cutting-edge stuff was completely toast. You try to ask ChatGPT what in the world is going on, and all you get back is access denied. Okay, this is the moment you realize something is seriously wrong here.
But then, a clue started to surface. People started seeing this weirdly technical error message that kept mentioning a specific company. This little message was the key. It told us this wasn't dozens of different websites all failing on their own. Nope. This was like a digital fingerprint left at the scene of the crime.
And that fingerprint? It pointed directly to a company that, let's be honest, most of us have probably never even heard of. A company that works totally in the shadows, acting as this invisible gatekeeper for a huge chunk of the internet. So, let's talk about Cloudflare.
So what does Cloudflare actually do? Well, the best way to think of them is like the internet's backstage crew. They're the security guards keeping bad guys out, the traffic cops making sure websites don't get overwhelmed, and the express delivery service making sure everything loads super fast. You never see them, but they're making the whole show run smoothly.
And just how important is this backstage crew? Well, get a load of this number. Over 20% of the entire web depends on Cloudflare's infrastructure. To put it another way, about 1 in every 5 websites you visit is running through their system. So yeah, when they have a problem, a huge piece of the internet has a problem.
Let's break that down a bit more. First, they act as a massive security shield, protecting websites from those nasty DDoS attacks. They also manage traffic, so when a site suddenly goes viral, it doesn't just crash. They speed things up by storing copies of websites all over the world. And maybe most importantly, they provide DNS services, which is basically the internet's address book. It's what turns the name of a website into numbers a computer can actually understand. They are, in a word, essential. Okay, so we've identified our culprit, but why did one company having a bad morning become everyone's bad morning? Well, it all comes down to a massive, cascading domino effect.
And believe me, it all happened fast. At 11:48 UTC, Cloudflare officially started investigating. By 12:21, things were starting to come back online, but it wasn't until just after 1 o'clock that they rolled out a full fix. The whole thing was only about an hour, but if you were trying to do anything online, it felt like an absolute eternity.
This is exactly why it was such a big deal. We think of the internet as this huge, sprawling thing, but it's really built on this invisible infrastructure. It's just like a power grid, right? You don't think about the power plant, you just flip a switch and expect the light to turn on. But when that one plant, in this case Cloudflare, goes down, the lights go out for tens of millions of people.
And here is where things get truly hilarious. The ultimate irony of the whole situation was captured perfectly by a user on Reddit. Because, where do you go to check if websites are down? You go to Down Detector. But people pretty quickly noticed a tiny little problem.
Yep, you guessed it. Down Detector was also down. And why? Because it also runs on Cloudflare. You literally could not check to see what was down because the checker itself was down. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It just goes to show you the mind-boggling scale of our dependency on this one single company.
So after the dust settled and everything came back online, what's the big takeaway here? This wasn't just some random glitch. It was a massive wake-up call. It was a stress test that revealed a really fragile truth about our digital lives.
You see, we like to imagine the internet as this vast, decentralized network where no one is in charge. But the reality? Well, it looks a little different.
About 20% of the web relies on Cloudflare. Another 30% relies on Amazon Web Services, or AWS. So you're telling me that just 2 companies provide the foundational power for nearly half of the entire internet? Wow.
And look, this wasn't some freak accident. This is becoming a pattern. It's just the latest in a string of massive outages. We've seen major breakdowns recently from Microsoft, from AWS, from Meta. It's a clear symptom of a much bigger issue. All our digital eggs are in just a few baskets.
And this quote just nails it. We have built this incredible, sprawling digital world that connects pretty much all of us. But its foundation, the invisible plumbing holding it all together, is way more fragile than any of us really knew.
So this all feels a little overwhelming, right? This fragile internet powered by just a few giant companies? I mean, what can we even do about it? Well, the good news is there are actually some real steps you can take to make your own corner of the internet a lot more resilient.
Now, if you're someone who actually runs a website or an app, the playbook is pretty clear. First, bookmark the status pages for your providers. Second, and this is the big one, have a backup DNS provider configured and ready to go. And third, just talk to your customers. Let them know what's up.
But what about for the rest of us? For everyone else, the single most important thing you can do is to stop putting all your eggs in one basket. Most of us use whatever DNS service or internet provider gives us without a second thought. But if you configure multiple DNS providers on your computer or your router, you build in some backup. If one goes down, the other can just take over. And honestly, setting this up is way simpler than you might think. Here are 3 of the most popular and reliable public DNS providers out there. You could literally go into your device's network settings right now and pop these numbers in. By setting up both a primary and a secondary, you're building your own personal safety net for the next big outage. You know, all of this leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? The great outage of 2025 was a huge reminder that, while we all live and work on the internet, most of us aren't the ones holding the keys. That power belongs to just a handful of companies that, until that morning, we didn't even know existed. And that's definitely something worth thinking about.